Before we dive into these disturbing tales, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more spine-chilling content. Tonight, we present 3 horror stories that are sure to leave you sleeping with the lights on. From the unsettling feeling of being watched, to the bone-chilling realization that something sinister lurks within the shadows, these stories will take you on a journey into the darkest corners of fear. So turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare to be disturbed. It all started with a prickling feeling at the back of my neck, a subtle unease that something was off. At first, I dismissed it as stress, the byproduct of long work days and city living, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. I'd catch glimpses of a dark figure lurking on the fringes of my vision, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. My apartment, once a sanctuary, became a cage of paranoia. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside my window sent shivers down my spine. I'd find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, heart pounding in my chest. One evening, as I walked home from work, the feeling intensified. It was like an icy hand gripping my spine, the hairs on my arms standing on end. I quickened my pace, my eyes darting from side to side, searching for the source of my unease. Then I saw him. Across the street, partially obscured by the shadows of a towering oak tree, stood a tall, gaunt figure. His face was hidden in the darkness, but I could feel his eyes burning into me. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The figure remained motionless, a specter bathed in the orange glow of the streetlights. For what felt like an eternity, we stood there, our gazes locked in a silent standoff. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. I rushed into my apartment, slamming the door shut behind me, the deadbolt clicking shut like a lifeline. I peered through the peephole, my heart hammering against my ribs. The street was empty. Over the next few days, the sightings became more frequent, bolder. I'd see him everywhere I went, across the street, in the reflection of shop windows, even in the flickering light of my television screen. Sleep offered no escape. Vivid nightmares plagued my nights, each one featuring the same menacing figure, his face always obscured, his eyes always watching. I tried to rationalize what was happening. Was it all in my head? A figment of my overactive imagination? But deep down, I knew the truth. Someone was stalking me. Desperate for answers, I confided in a friend, a private investigator. He listened patiently to my story, his expression a mixture of concern and skepticism. He promised to look into it, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Days turned into weeks, and the stalking continued. The fear became a constant companion, poisoning my every thought, every action. My once vibrant life had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. One evening, my friend, the investigator, called. His voice was grave, his tone urgent. "I found something," he said. "It's not good." He told me that the figure I had been seeing was real, a known stalker with a history of violence. He had been watching me for weeks, learning my routines, exploiting my vulnerabilities. My blood ran cold. He urged me to go to the police, to not go anywhere alone, but it was too late. As I listened to his words, I heard a noise outside my door. A slow, deliberate scratching. My heart leaped into my throat. He was here. The old Victorian house stood on a hill overlooking the town, its silhouette a jagged scar against the twilight sky. It was a grand old place with its ornate gables and sprawling verandas, but time and neglect had taken their toll. Paint peeled from its walls like scabs, and the once bright stained glass windows were now dull and lifeless. There was an air of melancholy about the place, a sense of forgotten grandeur that both intrigued and unsettled me. I had purchased the house for a steal at an estate sale, drawn to its faded elegance and the promise of a fresh start. Little did I know that I was stepping into a nightmare. The first few days in the house were uneventful, filled with the mundane tasks of unpacking and settling in. But as the week wore on, strange things began to happen. Footsteps echoed through the empty halls at night, heavy and deliberate, as if someone were pacing the floorboards above me. Doors creaked open and slammed shut on their own, the sound echoing through the silent house like gunshots. Objects moved around by themselves, disappearing from one spot only to reappear in another, as if manipulated by unseen hands. At first, I tried to rationalize these occurrences, attributing them to settling floorboards or drafts whistling through the old house. But as the incidents grew more frequent and more bizarre, I was forced to confront a chilling possibility. I was not alone. One night, as I lay in bed, my mind racing with unsettling thoughts, I heard a noise coming from the attic. It was a soft scratching sound like claws scraping against wood. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept out of bed and made my way to the attic door. The air grew cold as I approached the door, and a musty odor like that of an old crypt wafted from beneath the crack. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. What was I doing? This was madness. But curiosity, or perhaps a morbid sense of compulsion, got the better of me. I took a deep breath and threw open the door. The attic was dark and dusty, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering through a grimy window. Cobwebs hung from the rafters like macabre decorations, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I noticed something strange in the far corner of the attic. It appeared to be a shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, as if something were blocking out the meager light. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. The shadow moved, slowly at first, then with increasing speed until it was swirling and contorting like a living thing. I watched in terror as the shadow coalesced into a vaguely humanoid form, its edges flickering and shifting like flames. Then two eyes materialized within the darkness, burning with an unnatural intensity, their gaze fixed upon me with a malevolence that chilled me to my core. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat, my mind reeling from what I was witnessing. The figure took a step towards me, its form shimmering and distorting as it moved, and I knew that I had to get out of there. I turned and fled, scrambling down the attic stairs, my heart pounding in my ears. I slammed the door shut behind me, the sound echoing through the silent house. I could hear the scratching sound again, louder now, more insistent, as if whatever lurked in the attic was trying to break free. Chapter 3. The Disappearing Friend. Mark and I had been friends since childhood, inseparable companions bound by a shared love of adventure and a thirst for the unknown. So, when he suddenly vanished without a trace, it felt like a part of me had gone missing too. It all started on a Friday night. Mark had been acting strangely all week, withdrawn and preoccupied, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a brooding silence. When I pressed him about it, he brushed it off, muttering something about work stress and needing some time alone. That Friday, he had invited me to join him for a weekend camping trip in the Redwood National Park, a place we had been longing to explore since we were kids. I was thrilled, eager to escape the city and spend some quality time with my best friend. But as the day of our departure arrived, Mark was nowhere to be found. His phone went straight to voicemail, and his apartment door went unanswered. I checked with our mutual friends, but no one had seen or heard from him. A knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach. Something was terribly wrong. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of Mark. The police were baffled, his disappearance as inexplicable as it was sudden. They investigated every lead, every possibility, but each one led to a dead end. Hope dwindled with each passing day, replaced by a gnawing sense of despair. Then, just as abruptly as he had vanished, Mark reappeared. He was found wandering aimlessly along a deserted highway miles from where he was last seen, his clothes torn, his face covered in scratches, his eyes vacant and unfocused. I rushed to the hospital, my heart filled with a mix of relief and trepidation. When I saw him lying there, pale and gaunt, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, I could barely recognize him. It was as if the life force had been drained from him, leaving behind a hollow shell. When he finally regained consciousness, he had no memory of what had happened. The last thing he remembered was packing his backpack for our camping trip, and then nothing. It was as if the past few weeks had been erased from his mind. The doctors were baffled. They ran countless tests, but they couldn't find any physical explanation for his sudden disappearance or his amnesia. They chalked it up to psychological trauma, but I knew, deep down, that something more sinister was at play. Mark was never the same after that. He was withdrawn and distant, haunted by something he couldn't remember, something that lurked in the shadows of his mind. He refused to talk about what had happened, his silence speaking volumes. One evening, as we were reminiscing about old times, trying to recapture the camaraderie we once shared, Mark turned to me, his eyes filled with a fear I had never seen before. "I remember something," he whispered, his voice trembling, a flash of light, a blinding pain, and then darkness. He shuddered as if reliving a nightmare. There was something there, in the darkness, watching me. His words sent chills down my spine. Whatever had taken Mark, whatever had stolen his memories and left him a broken shell of his former self, was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. And I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before it came for me. There you have it, 3 terrifying tales that are sure to keep you up at night. From the chilling pursuit of the stalker, to the haunting presence in the haunted house and the unsettling mystery of the disappearing friend, we've explored the darkest corners of human fear. Which of these stories creeped you out the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more terrifying tales.